Michael's, arts and crafts retailer, okay? Record second quarter sales. Up goes the stock, 13%. A lot of good news coming out of the retailers today, as a matter of fact. How about, here's a number for you. Pew Research says only 37% of Americans believe today's children will grow up to be better off than they are. Come on, I want an economist. I got one. Brian Wesbury, chief economist with the First Trust Advisors. All right, Brian. Look, this is a real change. When I first came to America, I came because I want to make my kids better off than I am. I want to climb the food chain. Why are people now so pessimistic about the future for their children?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, Stuart, but when I graduated from college back in the early 1980s, people felt the same way, and it was because the economy had done so poorly in the 1970s. It had grown slowly, and that's the same thing that's happened over the last 7, 8, 9 years, ever since the crisis. And then people look at that slow growth and they go, it's such a grind, it's so hard to get ahead. But here's the similarity between those two times. Back in the 1970s, we raised regulation, we raised government spending, we were lifting tax rates. That's exactly what we did over this last 8 years. And whenever we do that, it's harder for the economy to grow. It's harder for young people to get ahead.
So would it turn around, Brian? Would it turn around if we got tax cuts and infrastructure and deregulation? If we got all of that and we got 4% growth, say, would that change the pessimistic outlook for the youngsters of the future?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what happened in the early 1980s. We cut tax rates, we held back spending, we deregulated, and that's what allowed people to get wealthier. That's what allowed incomes to rise. And in fact, during the 80s and 90s, that's where we created all these billionaires, Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and the Google guys. You know, that's where all of that came from, because we got a freer system with lower tax rates and less government involvement.
Oh, I love an optimistic economist. There aren't many around, but you're one of them, and Brian, you're all right. Next case, new numbers show people over the age of 80 control a larger share of the nation's money than people under 50. And, of course, there are a whole lot more under 50 than there are over 80. These five characters, they collectively, they're 6 of the 25 richest Americans, and all of those guys on the screen, they're over 80. What does an economist make of this wealth accumulation in late age?
Yeah, well, first of all, the number one thing that causes this to happen is the law of compound interest. You know, and that is, if you start with a little and let it build and let it grow and let it earn, over time it grows into a lot. And the only way to keep that going is to spend less than you earn. All right? We have to save and invest. So every one of these billionaires, you know, Warren Buffett, for example, 87 years old. That means he was born in 1930. And if you go back then, there were really rich families in the United States in the 20s and 30s. And the numbers were probably similar. People over, back then it was probably over 65 or 70 because we live longer now. But Warren Buffett was still able to create massive wealth, even though there were a lot of families in the U.S. that controlled a massive amount of wealth when he was born. And the secret is to save and invest and count on the power of compound interest.
Brian,
you know,
I want you to come and talk to one of my young daughters who has not yet joined the 401k plan at her corporation. And that's just throwing money away, failing to save over the long term. Last word to you.
Yeah, well, you know, every older generation always gets pessimistic about the younger ones.
Yes.
And I think today, I don't know, now I'm part of the older generation, but I also get pessimistic, because one of the problems I see is they're going to school, they're taking out loans to go to school, and then they're learning things that have nothing to do with business or engineering or math. They're learning social justice. And what happens there is that then they do fall behind because they aren't really trying to save and invest and build for the future.
Spoken
and
like
so
a true
what I would hope is
Reaganite.
that we have a... Yeah, exactly.
True Reaganite, no question.
We need a smaller government.
Yes.
We need freedom. And when you have freedom, you can grow your wealth.
Don't be such a stranger to this program, all right, Wesbury? I need an economist who's a Reaganite. I could use one. Thanks,
Yeah.
Dave. Thanks,
All right,
Brian. Appreciate it. Thank you.